The first I need to explain is that we are in the context of 8 days, if you can see that. This 8 days event is happening now, 8 days BCN. This is one of the, if you are tweeting, this is one that if you want to see your tweets on these screens, this is the hashtag you need to use, apart from OuiShare. And this event is a joint, let's say, umbrella event between different conferences and little events like this one that are happening in the city during this week, from now until next Monday. So we have the Open Design and Share Creativity conference. We have the Fab 10 starting on the 2nd. We have this talk. You can also go to visit the Big Bang Data exhibition at the CCCB. And we will also have a local chapter, a meetup of the Open Knowledge Foundation happening here in Barcelona. So basically, what we see is the open maker and collaborative movement, different types of activities happening here in the city. Okay, and this is a little bit of the background of this talk. Briefly, what is the collaborative economy and this creator citizen, especially in Barcelona? Oops, can you hear me? Yeah. So a little bit, especially focused in Barcelona. So when we talk about this collaborative economy, is all these practices and economic models based on horizontal structures and communities. And this is what OuiShare talks about all the time. Antonen will explain that a little bit later also about OuiShare. And the first thing, and probably the things that you should know the most, is the so-called collaborative consumption. Who is familiar with collaborative consumption? Okay, quite a lot of people. And with some of the examples. So we have the usual suspects of Airbnb and BlaBlaCar, and then more local things like Bising, which is I came here by bike, or Wallapop, which is this kind second-hand selling second-hand goods, a very simple smartphone application that is working very well, and it's being produced here in Barcelona. And actually, we are considered a reference, a hub. At international level, Barcelona is considered to be a hub on collaborative consumption. We see this article on collaborative consumption as a guide, and you can see Avantcar for car sharing, different say home exchange like My Twin Place or Knock. You also have different co-working spaces, being Mob one of them from Cecilia. Eat With, also the largest network of Eat With hosts is here in Barcelona. So we are a reference in collaborative consumption in the city. Who is familiar, I don't know, with, Eat With? Who is familiar with Eat With? Most of the people, yeah. BlaBlaCar also? Okay, so I will not keep asking everything, that's fine. But at the same time, we're also highlighted in some of the international magazines to be the ground zero of the legal fight against, or I'm not sorry, it's against, but in this context there are some legal problems. So Barcelona is also, you can read here, the Spanish city has become the ground zero in a fight over collaborative consumption, how the collaborative consumption should be regulated and taxed. Okay, so that's the other side of the coin. And obviously the users decide to do whatever they want to do. This is the creator citizen we are talking about. And in 2 days we have a demonstration at Plaza Sant Jaume, organized by some of the Airbnb hosts because they want to defend their right to rent the house, because the regulation is not allowing them to do that. So the creator citizen is facing some problems with regulation, and they decide to act upon themselves. And there is this demonstration happening in 2 days, no, in 3 days, in July 3rd, 11:30 in the morning, if you want to join, or if you are an Airbnb host. Other things that are happening in the city is all the design and fabrication manufacturing. Cecilia will be explaining more about the maker movement in the city. We have different things have happened recently. One of them is Let's Hack Lab Day. That was for kids from 5 to 12 years old, teaching them things like Scratch, Arduino, 3D printers. So that was very interesting. Last week, also organized by Mob and the Mate community in Mob, it was the Mini Maker Fair. In the city, and tomorrow, if you like that kind of stuff, there is a free event organized by Foxize. You can learn about 3D printing and laser cutters, again, happening at MOP. Sorry for that, everything is at MOP. But this is tomorrow evening, starting at 7. And obviously in the city, part of this 8 days umbrella event, you have the Fab 10. This is probably the largest ever event on the maker movement that have happened in the world so far. It's the 10th anniversary of the Fab Lab, which is a very large network of digital fabrication places and tools and people and communities and knowledge, and we are being flooded by makers in the city for the next week. And there is a super interesting symposium on the Monday the 7th. So you can check on the fab10.org. But all this is real. All this is created by the citizens with some support of the government, but it's mostly citizen-driven. We also have open knowledge. We were at the Forum Impulsa last week with Jimmy Wales from Wikipedia, and he highlighted how strong is the Catalan community in Wikipedia. The Wikipedia with a V is one of the, compared to the size of the population, is one of the strongest communities in the world. We also create a lot of Creative Commons content from here. Peer-to-peer finances, crowdfunding platforms. We have Berkami. We also have Goteo. Ulule, which is a pan-European crowdfunding platform. It's also operating from here. So we have a lot of activity in this space. Open government with platforms like Sentilo, which is very interesting. Something called the operating system of the city, CityOS. This is a project from Barcelona City Hall, where citizens can connect and get data and input data, which is kind of interesting. And we also have different exchange systems like Association of the Bancos de Tiempo of Spain. We have local currencies like ECOS. We have global cryptocurrencies like Bitcoins. And we even have some very strong development around Bitcoin here in the city and around the city. Some very interesting groups developing new projects like Ethereum. And what else? Well, a lot of things. So just to wrap up, and this is my final slide. The citizens are becoming really active. They don't care. They don't ask for permission. They just do things. They decided that the city is a place to share on one side. The city is a place to produce. And the city is a place to create commons and to share the commons among ourselves. This is obviously challenging the system. This is kind of shaking a little bit the traditional structures. And this is what we want to talk about here on the talk. And I hope it will be interesting.
My point of view is that we have this new collaborative citizen, this new producer citizen, this new creator citizen, which puts into value whatever they have, their own assets, whatever they know, or their know-how. And they put it into value without asking for permission. And this kind of new society, networked, which takes advantage of idle assets, which take advantage of common knowledge and put it at a common base, generates abundance, generates absolute abundance of intangibles, absolute abundance of knowledge, absolute abundance of design, open design, absolute abundance of programs and algorithms and everything you would need platform-wise, and relative abundance of material things. We can host more tourists without building more hotels. We can transport more people without building more cars. That's the kind of effect it generates on society and economy. On the other hand, that disrupts traditional industry and established business as the way they were. And it disrupted in a way that it's hard to stop, because these kind of solutions based on networks, based on distributed resources, they're more efficient, they generate more social density, they get to meet people, people meet people, and that densifies social relationships within the city, and in a more sustainable way, because they don't need to create new things to put them into value to generate taxes. And this is generating a shock, and this is generating the kind of news Albert has shown us, and the kind of resistances or the kind of attitudes that we either stop that or we don't care about regulation, we go our own way. So that's why with Albert and with some other people of the city, we're talking with very many different people, from the Association of Hotels to the people in the Airbnb, but as well in cars, in tourism, anyone that can listen to us. We're even talking with the mayor. We got a contact now to talk with the mayor. And we're proposing to create what we call the Taula Colaborativa da Ciutat. That means the collaborative table of the city. On this collaborative table, our aim is to gather around the same table in a public audience everyone who feels affected by a shock of this kind, by a new problem that we hadn't thought about before. So what we're trying to do is to have traditional industries, have experts on collaborative economy, have the new industries, the new startups getting into this place, having the communities who are taking advantage of this situation and having public audiences every 3 months so we can discuss in the public instead of pushing politicians to regulate in one way or in the other, having public conversations, and then every 3 months having a new conversation. In between these public audiences, we would like to gather the parts and try to find consensus or try to elaborate real information about what the impact is of this kind of an economy of the city, what the real impact is, and we should be able, in a period we estimate for difficult being a problem, in a year time, in 4 3-month sessions, to be able to reach, but allows us, especially the city of Barcelona, to take advantage from this privileged position Albert was talking about, and especially about the social plasticity of our society. Spanish society is a society that changes values very quickly and that adopts technology and new ways of using, for example, public space as well very quickly. We have to take advantage of this. We are in a position on which we can be one of the nodes of this new economy within Europe, within the world, and we shouldn't stop it, just we don't have the methodology to deal with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Javi. And I think now we need to get the advantage of having international speakers here to know a little bit more first about the people who are here, so about you, Neil and Shareable as a project, and then some of the experiences that you've similar to the collective economy, probably in San Francisco. You are also involved in the Seoul advisory board for major. So
yeah, sure. So I'm Neil Gornflow, and I'm probably the one responsible for us speaking English right now. So thanks for going that way. So Shareable is a nonprofit, and our mission is to empower everyone share for a more joyous, resilient, and equitable world. And we have 2 basic programs. We have the most visited online magazine about the sharing or collaborative economy in the world, and then we do community organizing. So in last fall, building on some work we'd done before, we launched the Sharing Cities Network, and the idea there is to work with partners around the world, including OuiShare and the local OuiShare organization here in Barcelona, to build a worldwide sharing movement, but with really strong kind of local roots and local action. And we got started on talking about and thinking about cities very early on. I just thought it, was becoming a more urban world, that this economy seemed to be emerging quickly in urban centers, that you could have the most impact also socially and environmentally speaking. And one of the first things that we did was in May of 2011, we held the first ever summit of where we were mixing cities and the sharing economy. And we invited a bunch of people from City Hall, the Chief Innovation Officer, Jay Nath, and people from Relay Rides and Get Around and Airbnb and cooperatives and other NGOs that were doing kind of poverty work or anti-poverty work. We catalyzed some action there, resulting in the city being very interested in this concept and what was going on in San Francisco. It was kind of a center or a focal point in the world for this action, right? And Shareable helped the mayor launch the Sharing Economy Working Group in 2012. And then later in 2012, Mayor Park in Seoul was, inspired by this. And these cities now are very connected. They're watching each other and sharing, I think, very intensively, because the different crises seem to be getting more and more severe. And so they launched their Sharing Cities initiative. And this is the most ambitious program. It's comes out of the mayor office. They have a 60-person innovation team. It's one of their main strategies, and it involves backing sharing startups and enterprises with media money. Am I going on too long? No. Is this? I don't know if we're are we getting into the meat of it, or you just want an introduction?
No, I don't.
Okay. And they're doing this very systematically. So the city it's 10 million people. It's a mega city. They have 25 what are called coups, which are kind of sub-cities with each has their own mayor and budget, and they're like working with each of the, like starting out with a few of them, rolling out the services with the local city governments, the sub-mayors, providing the trust in the system, so sort of being the trusted broker in that, and they're having really good success, and they're going to roll like a kind of whole myriad of services into each coup by coup, and then the plan is to get the coups to compete for grants to accelerate this even faster, right? So they're really going at it very, I think, systematically, and you know, Mayor Lee is a social entrepreneur, so he's a human rights lawyer, and he before going into politics, he led a foundation which helped. It was the largest reseller of secondhand clothes, right? And so this is a real extension of his career. So it's not like this bolt-on bullshit thing, you know. It's has substance, and he just got reelected. He has 4 more years. So I really expect to see a lot more out of Seoul, and we can, you know, we really focus on reporting on what they're doing, and what other cities are doing as well. So. The work that we've done with our partners like OuiShare in the last year is we did this Sharing Cities Map Jam, 50 cities around the world, map the sharing resources in their communities. Building on this, we did a campaign called Sharing Spring, and 40 cities, including Barcelona, did a Share Fest. A public festival of all that can be shared, bringing together local sharing leadership and publicly kind of, you know, kind of a coming out party for the local sharing economy. And you know, our estimate is that this reached around 10,000 people altogether, and couldn't have done it without our partners like OuiShare. So that's the work that we're doing.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we have a good example with both. You said the work in San Francisco that went so well, not so well, so it's complicated, and the one in Seoul, so it's good to have these references. Maybe you, Antonin, have other references and also opinions from OuiShare, so maybe you can introduce yourself a little bit. And
maybe very fast, because some people in the room, I think, already know OuiShare. Actually, OuiShare started from a meeting with Neil, because Shareable started in 2008 in the US, and we started gathering people around the idea of that sharing and collaboration between people makes a lot of sense, lots of economic, social, and environmental sense. And so starting gathering people in Paris, and then in other cities in France, and then I met with Albert, and so Albert started building the community here in Barcelona. That was 2 or 3 years ago. And now OuiShare has become like a growing international network. We do 3 things. We build communities of innovators, entrepreneurs, economists, now in 15, 20 cities in Europe and South America. So people like today who gather around new ideas, who try to share their knowledge, and also involve policymakers, traditional companies, in order for them to better understand what's happening in the collaborative economy. The second thing we do is building and producing and sharing knowledge on the economic, social and environmental impacts of the collaborative economy, because when we talk now to policymakers, usually they don't really know what's happening, and so they ask us basically to produce knowledge on those impacts so that they can make better and informed decisions. And the last thing is a do tank, because we have lots of amazing entrepreneurs, innovators in the community who can start their own project and start a company or another non-profit within the network. So a few projects and ventures have been started by OuiShare people. The most important one is OuiShare Fest, which is one of the main international events on the collaborative economy that happen every year in Paris. maybe in another city next year, which is quite interesting because you know, like we have this discussion now about how collaboration and sharing are also a huge opportunity, an amazing opportunity for cities, and cities are you know, becoming aware of this. And before you had this creative cities concept, and now like the collaborative city or the sharing city concept, which is going to become like the next marketing appealing concept for cities. So we're trying now in France to play on this, and there are a few cities which are really interesting in you know, making sharing happen in their cities. The only thing I wanted to say is that beyond collaborative consumption, collaborative production, the collaborative economy, what we are really seeing is the emergence of a collaborative culture, and this is really what I am personally, and what OuiShare I think is more interested in. And this collaborative culture happens at a local level, mostly in cities, and probably more at a also global level, because we share knowledge, we share experiences now on social networks, and this collaborative culture starts spreading all around the world. And I do think that at a political level now, this collaborative culture will also help build the new foundation of Europe, maybe with a network of cities sharing knowledge and sharing their experience building this collaborative economy in the city. So this is really what OuiShare is up to, sharing this culture. It's less about consuming and more about producing stuff. So like the makers movement is really like a very important piece of this collaborative culture.
Sure. I started a space called Makers of Barcelona about 2.5 years ago, and it came from a very long story. I arrived to Barcelona about 12 years ago. You have to kind of imagine, I landed in Barcelona, I didn't speak any Spanish, not to mention Catalan, so very lost. I didn't have any friends. Not that I was sad, I just didn't know anybody. I didn't have any friends, I didn't have any contact, I just finished school, I didn't have a job. I landed in Barcelona and I was completely lost. And I thought to myself, have you guys ever watched Friends, the show, Friends, the sitcom? Mm-hmm. You know Monica's house, right? Everybody walks into their house and they start in a sofa and they start sharing things, they're sharing food. And I thought, wouldn't that be so wonderful if there's a place where you can go, professionally speaking, I mean not like a social place, which already exists in the city. It'd be so cool if you can just like walk in and all of a sudden you're connected. You're connected to the society, you're connected to other professionals, you're connected to ideas, and you can start working, you know, as a professional. So that was where the whole idea of Mob came from. I just needed to make friends, basically, very quickly. And we started about two and a half years ago, and we knew that in order to grow a creative, collaborative community, you actually have to have enough room to grow. You can't be 2 people and call it a community. So we, you know, very quickly we learned that we needed a very big space. We're kind of made up this number that says 50 and up, just to start, right? So we found a really big space. We found a place that is very visible, has to be walk off the street so that everyone can see what we do. I mean, what's the point of doing something really cool if no one can actually see what you're doing? And the third thing was that we also knew that along the same mentality of visibility, we wanted it to be very central. So just within these 3 parameters, we found a place right next to Arco de Triunfo. We started with maybe 40 members. We currently are a community of 200 people. And about 2 months ago, we opened up Fab Cafe, which is half coffee shop, half digital fabrication lab. And this all came with the idea that I went to go visit some friends of mine in Tokyo, and they opened up the first Fab Cafe in Tokyo. And there there was a birthday party, 5 years old. And I thought, oh, wow, you know, kids, birthday party, fun, you know, completely bored. And I noticed that they were all drawings on the iPads, because we can be inclusive of all types of people who are interested in you know, being in the power of being able to produce. And I don't know if I should go into details, but I come from a very specific theory that I think everyone is a maker. And I think that we should all just stop working today and just start making. Because there's, should I go into this? No, I'm taking off. Yeah, okay, so hear me out. Hear me out. Okay, let me roll up my sleeve. Okay, so basically my argument is that we are in the first time of human history where, first of all, if you think about education, a long, long time ago, people have no access to education. Just 100 years ago, 150 years ago, there's no access to education. Then we shift to public education, which is just standardization. Everyone learns the same thing, one size fits all. And nowadays, we're actually still in the same kind of education mode that we were 50, 100 years ago. But nowadays, we're shifting into something different, which is that we have internet. Oh, great, because we have access to knowledge in 0.24 seconds that we didn't have before. That's a major change, because if you pair that up with what's happening nowadays, which is that technology is very cheap. You can buy 3D printers, you can buy Arduinos for 50 euros, you can buy a 3D scanner for 300 euros, and it will ship to your house in 3 days. And you can have all these technologies in your house, which I don't, but I wish I do. But anyway, you can have all of this in your house. You have all the knowledge in your hands. You can go into one of the crowdfunding website. If you have a good idea, get funding before you have to go to the bank or ask your parents, right? Money isn't that accessible. And the last thing is that if you have a good project, if you have a good idea, you can actually go online and communicate via blog, Facebook, Twitter, and do your own communication, which means that you can actually do anything you want. Anything. For the first time in human history, the power of manufacturing, the power of making anything, not just things that are tangible, but things that could be, virtual, is in our hands. That's amazing. Not just, the power isn't just in the government, not just in big companies, not just in those that are wealthy. No, each and every single one of us have that kind of power, which is what Javier was talking about. The only thing missing is that we don't know it. It's like we're superhero, we're born with superhero power, and we're like doing normal people things. So this is why I like to argue that we should just all stop working and start making, because in the process of making, we can discover what the superpower that we have in each and every one of us. And not only that, if all of us have superhero powers, wait. If all of us have superhero powers, and we all get together and use our superhero powers collaboratively and collectively, that's when all this amazing stuff happens.
What are the showstoppers to be superheroes? And I want to an open debate. I'm not going to direct the question to any of you. From your own experience, so what are the problems that this creator citizen, this maker citizen, this collaborative citizen is facing in terms of regulation, taxation, zoning, that just to start with, and maybe to complete, or maybe to ask an opinion also, what should be the role of the governments in this space, where should they regulate? And in your own experience, if there is a difference between the left wing and the right wing, this is all a school division of the wall, but this space attracts both, which is kind of funny, because it's both libertarian and a little bit more communist. So it's so a little bit of opinions on that space. I know the question is complex, so maybe Javi, you want to.
We talk, no, but yeah. There are two collectives which I'm amazed. They don't understand the change yet, and that's consumer associations, because they've become one of the stoppers. They still think there's a difference in power between manufacturers, big companies, and consumers. So they protect consumers. They don't realize you can talk with a corporation with a tweet, and you can generate a conversation, and you can make a campaign at change.org, and if something is really important, you may oblige the corporation to change in some way or another. So they put so much emphasis in protecting us as consumers, they don't allow to liberate our producer rights. So the new rights we have to ask for are not consumer rights. We've got plenty of them. We need producer rights. And the second collective, which I am surprised they're not changing their view of this, is unions. Unions were born to protect workers, no? traditional workers, but we know we don't have traditional jobs anymore. The jobs are deteriorating, and maybe in the future we rather have occupations rather than full-time jobs. So, but as they were born with jobs, as they believe that the future and the only way to go about is to have full-time jobs. So I think that what we're needing here, and we will talk afterwards about government, is everyone integrating this citizen as a producer, citizen as a creator in their own DNA, because that was, as Cecilia has put so nicely, what we've become.
It's interesting because there's this whole new discussion framing around the kind of the role between the producer and the consumer. And all of a sudden you see a new role called the prosumers, people that are producers and consumers at the same time. And because we now currently have that kind of consumer power to manufacture. So it'll be interesting to see how that shifts towards when you are kind of, you are your own enemy, you know, at the same time. But anyway.
Do we have maybe some examples of these problems in terms of regulation, taxation? I don't know, examples that you know, or just?
Well, I mean, everyone or many people have heard of regulatory challenges that Airbnb and Lyft and Uber have had, and that makes the headlines. And I think they actually do this on purpose. You know, raise $1 billion and then break all the rules, and it's like this. You get tons of press, and then you get all the users, because even the bad news attracts new users. You know, but underneath that though. Is the reality that that's just the tip of the iceberg. We did a policy report called Policies for Shareable Cities, and it's a booklet in 40 pages of policies that cities can adopt to make it easier to co-produce and share in cities. And you know, there's a bunch of like super practical, uncontroversial changes that we can make. Like for instance, you know, free and subsidized parking for car sharing. We just got that in San Francisco in the last year or so. And then also like there's take this like in housing cooperatives, you can't work on your own property. Like even though you're the owner of it, you can't work on your own property because it breaks labor laws, right? And another example is, you can't make food in your own kitchen and sell it, right? And there are now these new cottage food laws. So for certain types of food that are fairly safe and so forth, you can cook it in your kitchen and then bring it to market. So I think they're across the board and very deep into the nitty-gritty of our regulatory regime globally that really favors ownership and buying and selling from in a vertical fashion from individual to big corporation or to businesses. Like we need a kind of new system altogether.
The role of cities need to change totally. They need to move from a top-down perspective and dynamic toward a more curator local government, which role will be to try to see who are the citizens within the cities who are already moving things and building maker spaces, fab labs, who are building those startups for sharing economy to happen at a local level. So to build upon Cecilia's words, I think cities should become playgrounds for superheroes. but so we need to like how many superheroes are empowered now? Like maybe I think that's a great team of superheroes. But also what needs to change is education, because like now the education is still very top down, and we are raised and educated, especially in France, Spain, and Europe countries, to be consumers and to be workers, employees. And now we need to be educated to be entrepreneurs, to be superheroes. And I mean, there is a long way to go for this to change.
At the end, we are creators, we are empowered, we can be superheroes, we connect among ourselves, but always through a massive platform. So how can we be sure that we still have the right to connect and fight against this platform if they behave not properly or something like that? We had a question before from the audience in another conference with Neil this afternoon, just to frame the thing in an easy way. WhatsApp, no? They decided to charge €1. They got all the users, and when they got all the users, they decided to charge €1 per year. How could we avoid situations like that platforms behave in the wrong way, and how can we defend? What are the options for the citizens to be even more empowered?
If you look at the industry of co-working spaces, for example, it's a very, very distributed industry. The few examples of co-working spaces that try to keep the same brand and scale and have like 10 or 15 spaces, for example, in the world, didn't work. So I think like the ways the industry of co-working spaces developed is probably a great way of the way other industries in the collaborative economy could also scale.
People can easily leave if they don't like what's happening on the platform, if the social contract is broken. And now that more than ever, it's easier to create something on your own as well. So the cost of producing any kind of software has like dropped like, I don't know, 10-fold or 100-fold since like the dot-com boom. So for instance, there's two companies that we've written about. One is Agora, and it's a beverage company in the UK, and they crowdsource their product decisions and then pay the contributors. The ones that contribute the most get paid. They get money from PayPal, and then there's a company called Loconomics out of Berkeley, and it's a kind of co-op version of TaskRabbit.
Maybe we can explain TaskRabbit.
Yeah, it's a task marketplace. So if you want someone to go like do your grocery shopping or something, you can go online and find someone to run the errand for you, as an example. On that platform, the workers compete to get the job, so they actually drive the wage down by competing against one another. So it's gotten a lot of criticism, and I think well-deserved criticism for being kind of exploiting workers, right? And so Loconomics is the opposite, is that the workers in this case, the rabbits, if you will, are the owners, and they don't compete with one another. They collaborate to create a service that's high value and but also fair wage. So yeah, I think that's what I think we will see more of those types of things, especially because like if you look at the economics, like what a VC looks for when they invest in a company is they want low user acquisition costs, right? That it's cheap and fast to bring on users, and that the lifetime value of that customer is high. So over X number of years, they'll generate X, Y value, right? So if you have that, that's a winning combination, right? But what's happening is there's an explosion of technology startups, of apps and internet-based startups. It's cheap to create them. So to compete in the future, companies are going to have to give, that's a way to lower acquisition costs, is to give out the shares to the users, right? And to keep them longer. So the economics work out that distributing ownership makes a lot of sense, and people in Silicon Valley are already doing this, right? So yeah, look for that more. We'll be writing about it for sure, because it's really interesting.
I think we are in this transition moment where we have new networked businesses with old financing schemes. And that makes that there's a contradiction among using distributed assets and distributed capacities with centralized capital. So we're going to see things in the sense that Neil was saying, of distributed capital or permanent ownership or cooperatives or whatever. I think that's the only, or open software as well, helps a lot to lower entry barriers into this space.
Right, and I mean, I think that's the trend overall too, is that it's just getting cheaper and cheaper to do a startup, you need fewer people and less capital, and more VCs are playing a knowledge role and less of a capital role, like the examples of like Y Combinator and the incubators and accelerators.
And so less employees and less jobs.
And more value.
And more ownership, though. Yeah.
Well, more makers. You don't work anymore. Well, I just wanted to add to that. There's also, we're also increasing the rate of innovation. So the next person who's doing the WhatsApp is going to be better. And that rate of, creating something bigger, better, and more creative and more innovative is going to start happening again and again and again and again. And if you're not on top of the games, if you start doing things that Albert mentioned, you're gonna be out. You're gonna be out of the system. So
it's very easy to go down. Who remembers MySpace? No, it was huge at its moment. No, and it's out of. I mean, if users get out, it just cannot hold.
Right. I mean, you have to ask the question like, is it a business or a rave? And in the case of MySpace, it was just a rave. Yeah.
So maybe let's open the floor to the people who are here. So we also need to be horizontal, not centralized here in the round table. There is a microphone there in the back. So whoever wants to ask a question, if you want to ask the question in Spanish for some reason, we can translate that. That's fine. And so please be brave. Who will be the first?
There you go.
Hi. Thank you for the talk. It was very, very interesting. My name is Joan. I'm working on a project which is based on crowdsourcing. And it's called Testodrome. It's a tool, it's a service for companies who are developing mobile apps and they want to get them tested and validated. So there is a crowd of people who download their apps and give them feedback and report bugs and stuff. So these people will of course, collect or earn money for their work. And I'm facing this problem where I don't know what is going to happen in the near future because right now there is a big legal hole in there. So any tester can earn money or earn rewards for their work, but at a certain stage, I don't know when it's going to happen. So if the regulation is going to change, and then maybe these testers will no longer be able to receive money for their work. What do you think is going to happen in the next future? How are going to be the next steps, and what regulations are going to be changed by the governments in order to legalize these kind of micro jobs?
Tough question.
Pay them with bitcoins. No. I see how people couldn't be paid for something that's done, and there are very many ways of paying them. But and currencies are being invented all the time, so that could be a way. But I don't see the threat that you won't be allowed to pay who pay you a service.
Someone might see it as how do you call it? Competencia desleal. It's like, so you are not paying a fair salary to someone to work for you, and so you are skipping taxes and social security and stuff like that, whereas other companies are legally paying workers to do this job, and they cannot offer the same rates as you do. And I see governments being in favor of big companies that have employees and are paying their taxes and social security, and against these small crowdsourced communities that are, of course, adding value to the customers, to the products and services, but they are in most cases not declaring their earnings, and this money is not going anywhere, just to their pockets. So I'm a bit concerned about this.
No, I mean, the question also is the service you're mentioning empowering for the crowd, or is it using the crowd? And for me, this is also a big question, because there are lots of crowdsourcing now innovations that are not that empowering. When you look at 99 Design, for example, they put in competition all the designers of the world, and so you have 150 designers competing, and only one will get the job. So
it's not the case, but
no, I know. And
legally it's the same stuff. So.
But so for maybe a way to solve this would be not to pay people, because when you pay people so little for the jobs they do and they should be paid more, maybe you could just reward them with if you work with companies that have some stuff they could give to those people, maybe it's a way to solve it. I see many crowdsourcing apps and organizations solving this by rewarding people instead of paying them.
That is what I'm thinking as well, but of course money is always more attractive for users. And there should be, I think there should be a fair way to do it. But nowadays there is not, so it's a legal hole, and nobody has taken a decision how to make this fair for everyone. And I'm just wondering whether you have an idea how this will be sorted out in the future.
I don't know if money is. I don't know. I don't think money is the driven force for most people. I think that there's a whole different level of drive for people. And one of this, for my own experience, is success. If a product is very successful, people pride themselves being part of this movement. So that could be one way of thinking about it.
We still think in terms of employers and employees, and something very strange, which is an autonomous, an independent worker who pays its own social security. And what's happening with this creator citizen is that each citizen becomes an economical entity. If you put in place what you have, what you know, your know-how, as is your case, you become an economical entity. And our fiscal system and our legal system doesn't recognize the individual as an economical entity. Next step is the Internet of Things, and things will become economical entities of themselves. Like photocopies, who charge you by photocopy, this will be everywhere. And we don't have the legal thing as to consider mobile telephone maybe an economical entity by itself. So we need to open up our map. I don't know about your specific problem, but we need to realize that this new producer, it has economical effects in his spontaneous natural life, not only when he puts out and gets into the office.
But so in Spain, you need to have the autonomo. You need to pay 200 euros per month to be able to declare to be able to declare what you made on Airbnb.
It's a penalty to be producer. Yeah, that's the definition. If you want to produce, you need to pay a monthly penalty of 200.
So basically, you cannot declare the money you make on Airbnb in Spain.
Right.
No, one Airbnb case, because it's a rental, it can go directly to your taxation. You don't need to be an autonomous for that, because it's not a service. You are renting something you own, or you are subletting, but it's kind of complicated. The case, but if you're providing a service like TaskRabbit was mentioned, then yeah, you should be declared. You should be an autonomous or a freelancer. This is the case, or you are providing, you are cooking in your house for Eat With. So what is service oriented? Yeah, you need to be an autonomous.
That needs to change.
Yes,
that should be progressive, maybe 10% from Euro 1. And that would be a way not to put barriers to become a producer.
There's no incentive.
What is being discussed in Germany and in France is it would be like no tax until 3,000 euros a year, which is not that much, because what is being discussed is that those 3,000 euros have other external other positive externalities, especially at the social level, but it's very complicated to get policymakers agreed on this.
Some other questions? I think we've opened a lot of doors. There's a question over there. Yeah.
What's the situation in the States? Can you sell a service by yourself? Do you need a permit? Do you need to pay taxes? Do you have to pay for the right to produce?
You fill out a 1099. That's all.
1099.
It's just a form. You know, if you get income outside a job, it's one-page form. You fill it out. and that's it.
If I got the question right, it's more like if we could systematize and find a way to differentiate the different types of sharing, the ones that are more like sharing the cost, the ones that are more gift economy, sharing for free, and the ones that are more profit oriented because you are selling a service through a platform. So and the ones that are more empowering, you were asking this question before, no? The services that are more empowering for the users and the ones that are actually using the community for something. So I don't know if there is no, from my knowledge, there is nothing on that space because this question is very new. But I think it's a very appropriate one.
I think there are a few criteria. One of them is does the community take part in the governance of the platform? So is the community a mean or is the community an end? That's a way first to check if the service is more or less empowering. Then does the person doing this service or taking part in the community learn anything? Or is it just a resource? Or is it learning anything through the platform? Other ideas?
I mean, you know, cooperatives are a really good example to distinguish between something that's more common good and more, on the other hand, you know, that exploits. And co-ops are the members own and manage the business. So they make the decisions and they own, and you know, they're this is a kind of a different world than the world of technology startups, and there aren't many that I can think of. I can't think of any like big technology startup that's a cooperative. You know, it just hasn't happened yet, but it could happen.
That's why I think we need to come up with new models. Because if there are technology startups that worked so well, it's for a reason. If they were so fast, and if they were not cooperatives, if it's for a reason. And if cooperatives are usually super slow, it's also for a reason. So I believe strongly in the emergence of hybrid models between that would include non-profit structure and more for-profit structures, the non-profit being used for the protection of the commons, and the for-profit structures can be like very traditional startups, would have the obligation of delivering and sharing commons. That would be that's the Linux model basically. But there are many other ways of making this happen, and the idea would be to combine the flexibility and the fast path of a startup and the creation of commons for the common good.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add, like, when Albert was introducing and he had these different points of the collaborative economy, I think the one that is next to add to that list is, I see the beginnings of a kind of renaissance or Cambrian, you know, explosion of new forms of organizations, of hybrids, co-op and for-profit, and you know, in between. And you know, I also there's this new thing called what is it called? Autonomous corporations. So using the blockchain to create an enterprise on the web, which everyone kind of participates in and gets value out of, and it owns together, and the way the sort of Bitcoin works. I don't quite get it, but it's right on the horizon, and and I think that's the frontier. I think it's really exciting. I think people should go into it, get a lawyer, but. I think that's where the real opportunity is, because I think to compete as a business, that is an advantage you're going to actually need. And the longer you can hold on to them, the more stakes that you give them, the more they are going to contribute.
I believe as well there are two indicators you may use they're not definite, but to make an impression. One would be there are platforms that don't allow their users to get in contact among them. So the platform is the market, and it negotiates with each citizen individually, no? And that's one way of going about. There are some others that allow their users and producers to build communities and to discuss things. That's a different way of going about. And second indicator, I would say, there are platforms who keep proprietary all knowledge they produce by generating their own activity. There are platforms that share, that produce open knowledge. And I believe that's as well a different way of going about.
I just wanted to kind of talk about what you mentioned about how communities are slow and how tech startups are really fast. Cooperatives, yeah, sorry. Just by my own observation, communities are slow partly because you have to build that trust and you have to build those relationships. I mean, it's not something that you just exchange money and that's it, end of the relationship. So the whole entire list that you have shown, those 6 things are different type of currency, basically. You know, me owning a car is a kind of value. Me having a certain knowledge is a kind of value. So all of those things need to also be considered when you're talking about economy. It's just not just money.
I have a question regarding the boundaries. Is this local, or do you think this could be global?
One model, I think, that explains this relationship between these 2 scales, local and global, is the way Fab Labs operate, and where production is done locally, but the knowledge is shared globally, right? So you can pull down a design and then produce it in your neighborhood Fab Lab, and also locally the knowledge and space and access to the tools are also shared, and I think this is more the kind of regime or structure we'll see more of as nation states, as that kind of network. This sort of routes around it, it's like it's global and local, and the state actually gets cut out in some way.